Do you think the US dollar in your hand will remain the world's most powerful currency forever? You are mistaken. History whispers something very clear to us. No reserve currency lives forever. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and Britain. They were all once at the top of the world, and they all suffered the same fate. The dollar's 81-year reign is currently facing its greatest test. So, how close are we to the inevitable end? Now, I am telling you the behind-the-scenes story of a 500-year cycle. Imagine, the year is 1944. Delegates from 44 allied nations have gathered in the magnificent halls of the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire. Inside that room, they are about to make a decision that will shape the global economy for the next 80 years. Britain, the world's financial superpower for 2 centuries, has reached a deadlock. Its national debt has skyrocketed to 249% of its GDP. After 2 major world wars, the empire that once ruled the seas is now financially exhausted. And everyone in the room knows this painful truth. For this reason, they do something rarely seen in history. They transfer the status of global reserve currency from one empire to another. In other words, they transfer the global reserve currency status from the British pound to the US dollar. However, this change was not just a financial handoff. It was the repetition of a pattern that has repeated itself for over 5 centuries. The economic cycle, that predictable cycle consisting of rise, peak, overextension, and collapse. Every global reserve currency followed this same life cycle. And today, the US dollar is experiencing, one by one, the same cracks that its 4 predecessors lived through. To understand how the cycle progresses, we need to rewind time. In 1450, the Portuguese real became the world's first true reserve currency. Portugal dominated global trade for more than 80 years. This was no coincidence. They had revolutionized navigation by mapping the sea routes. When the Ottoman Empire conquered Istanbul in 1453 and closed the old routes, Portugal started a new era by sailing around Africa. Lisbon became the center of the trading world. However, success brought overextension. Military deployment across 4 continents rapidly depleted the treasury, and by 1580 it was replaced by Spanish silver. Spain's rise began with the discovery of Mount Potosí in the Bolivian Andes in 1545. This mountain produced nearly half of the world's silver. The Spanish minted the pieces of 8 coins stamped with a P, history's first truly global currency. Spain's dominance lasted 110 years. But then the familiar pattern took the stage again, increasing debts and overextension. Philip II failed to repay Spain's loans 4 times. Inflation rose 4-fold, and in 1641, Spain's monetary power came to an end. The Dutch Republic took the stage, seizing monetary power from Spain. In the 1600s, Amsterdam became the financial center of the world. The Dutch pioneered modern finance. They developed the stock exchange and established marine insurance. The Dutch guilder maintained its dominance in world trade for 78 years. However, they fell into the same mistakes. Military expansion and wars drove the country to bankruptcy. Towards the end of the 1700s, it was Britain's turn to take the stage. Supported by industrial power, the British pound became the longest-running reserve currency in modern financial history, from the 1720s to 1944. However, the First and Second World Wars dragged Britain into a debt spiral. By 1945, when government debt reached 270%, Britain had already lost its financial dominance. With Britain's economic collapse, the transition from sterling to the dollar was now official. This brings us back to 1944, to Bretton Woods. The new system pegged the dollar to gold and everything else to the dollar. Although the gold standard was abandoned in 1971, the dollar found a new guarantee. With the petrodollar system, every country became beholden to the dollar. This artificial demand allowed the US to stay afloat despite massive financial deficits. However, today, the numbers are changing. While 70% of the world's reserves were in dollars in 2000, this fell to 57.74% in 2000 and to 56.92% in 2006. The share of foreign investors dropped from 50% to 30% by early 2005. De-dollarization is accelerating. BRICS nations are developing payment networks like BRICS Bridge that bypass the dollar entirely. America's own balance sheet is under heavy pressure. As of January 2026, Total U.S. debt has reached $38.4 trillion. This means 126.8% of GDP. And again, the same model. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and Britain, they all experience the same cycle. The US dollar is now in its 82nd year. We are approaching a historical turning point. Every reserve currency has passed through 4 stages: rise, dominance through innovation and power; peak, the universalization of the currency; overextension, massive military costs and spiraling debts; collapse, loss of confidence and the transfer of power. Today, with 900 bases in 130 countries and $8 trillion in war spending, the U.S. is showing all the symptoms of the overextension phase. What lies ahead for the U.S.? History offers clues. Portugal never returned. Spain fell into a centuries-long decline. The Netherlands turned into a regional power. Britain's dominance faded after 1945. The average lifespan of reserve currencies is 95 years. The dollar is in its 81st year. The symptoms are familiar: a shrinking global share, rising BRICS alternatives, and fading petrodollar agreements. The model that defined 5 centuries of economic history is repeating itself. The only remaining question is, how fast will this transition be? Will it be gradual or a sudden collapse? Will a single power emerge or a multipolar world? History does not repeat itself perfectly, but it certainly rhymes. And if this rhyme holds true, we are approaching the final verses of the dollar's dominance. If you liked my video, you can support me by subscribing and liking.